Welcome to Rise Untold, where the stories behind the spotlight come alive. September 18th, 55 years since the world lost Jimi Hendrix. Yet the sound of his guitar still lingers, as if time has not been able to silence it. This year, actress Morgan Fairchild, now 75, decided to share her memory of a man whose music rewrote the rules of what was possible. She didn't speak as a distant fan or someone recalling a concert from the crowd. She spoke as someone who had been close enough to see the legend take shape, close enough to feel it in her bones. It happened by chance. "My ex was a music promoter," she wrote, "and we did a Hendrix concert early on. I remember standing on stage with him for mic check and hearing these sounds come out. We had never heard music like this before. Amazing. Pause on that for a moment. Imagine being there, an empty venue, the seats not yet filled, the spotlight not yet switched on. Just Jimmy with his guitar slung over his shoulder, tuning up, testing the microphone. But when he played, it wasn't just noise. It wasn't just sound. It was something entirely new, distorted, twisted, alive. The world had never heard music like this before. It was wild, electric, dangerous, and yet beautiful. A fusion of blues, rock, and something undefinable, something almost spiritual. And Fairchild, in that moment, was hearing it firsthand before the rest of the world even knew what was coming. But her story didn't end there. She remembered how Hendrix wasn't just a star on stage. He was a man who loved the music so deeply that he didn't want to stop. Later, he came to our club and jammed till 4 a.m. He was such a sweet guy. Such a loss. Somewhere I still have some sunglasses he gave me. Sweet, that's the word she used. Because despite his explosive performances, despite the chaos around him, Hendrix was remembered not as arrogant or unkind, but as gentle. He would stay up all night, playing not for fame or money, but for the joy of it. And in the middle of it all, he gave her something simple. Sunglasses. A small, human token that now, decades later, carries the weight of memory. Born November 27, 1942, in Seattle, Hendrix had come a long way by then. The son of a working-class family, he grew up with very little. His father often struggled to provide, and the young Jimmy found escape in a cheap, second-hand guitar. He wasn't trained. He wasn't schooled in music theory. He was self-taught, experimenting, failing, trying again, until he pulled sounds out of those strings no one else could. By the late 1960s, those sounds had become the voice of a generation. Purple Haze. Hey Joe, Voodoo Child. These weren't just songs. They were explosions of freedom, of rebellion, of breaking chains. They captured the restless spirit of the 60s when young people were questioning everything: war, authority, tradition. And Hendrix gave that feeling a soundtrack. But fate had a cruel twist waiting. September 18, 1970, just 27 years old. Jimi Hendrix died, gone in an instant. Too young, too soon. He became one of the first faces of what people later called the 27 Club, a tragic group of artists who burned too brightly and were gone too fast. Janis Joplin, Brian Jones, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, all of them, like Hendrix, frozen in time at 27. Yet, before his death, Hendrix left us with a moment so powerful it can never be erased. Woodstock, 1969. It was the festival that defined a generation, and Hendrix was the closing act. The crowd had already been shaken by days of music, but nothing could prepare them for what he was about to do. He played Hear My Train A-Comin'. He tore through Voodoo Child, Slight Return. And then, silence fell before the first notes of the Star Spangled Banner. But this was not the anthem anyone had ever heard before. His guitar screamed, wailed, imitated bombs dropping, people crying, sirens blaring. It was war translated into music, a protest and a tribute all at once. It was art turned into history. That performance became legendary, but behind it, there was pain. Later, on the Dick Cavett show, Hendrix revealed the truth. He said he had only gotten 8 minutes of sleep the night before. He admitted he was so exhausted, he had a nervous breakdown. "I didn't know what was happening," he told Cavett. It's like a nervous breakdown or whatever. Think about that. A man on the verge of collapse, racked with exhaustion, nerves shot, but still able to create one of the most unforgettable musical moments in American history. That's the cruel paradox of genius. It burns so brightly, but it often consumes itself in the process. And yet, 55 years later, people still remember. Morgan Fairchild's memory was not about the fame, not about the headlines, but about the man himself. A young guitarist standing on stage making sounds no one had ever heard before. A kind soul who stayed late into the night, playing for the love of music. A friend who once handed her a pair of sunglasses. That is how legends live on, not just in the music they leave behind, but in the memories of the people who stood beside them, who saw them not as icons but as human beings. Today, Jimi Hendrix remains one of the greatest guitarists the world has ever known. His influence runs through every generation of musicians that followed, from classic rock to modern blues, from heavy metal to alternative. You can hear echoes of his sound in every distorted riff, every bending note, every attempt to make a guitar not just an instrument, but a voice. He proved that music wasn't about perfection. It was about emotion, about taking what you feel and pushing it out so powerfully that others feel it too. That is why Hendrix still matters. That is why, 55 years after his death, people still listen, still remember, still feel. And so, as Morgan Fairchild's words remind us, it wasn't just the music that made him unforgettable. It was the man, the sweetness, the humanity, the passion. If Jimi Hendrix could rise from nothing, create a sound the world had never heard, and leave behind a legacy that even death couldn't silence, then maybe, just maybe, there's a lesson for all of us. Because his story reminds us that greatness is not about how long you live, but how deeply you live. Hendrix did not have decades to build his legend. He had moments, fleeting moments of brilliance, of passion, of pouring every ounce of himself into the strings of a guitar. And yet, those moments became eternal. That is the power of living fully. Even in the middle of exhaustion, even while battling inner demons, he gave the world something unforgettable. Something that still plays, still echoes, still inspires half a century later. We all struggle. We all face nights that feel endless and mornings that feel too heavy to rise. But Hendrix's story is proof that beauty can be born in those very struggles. That sometimes, the very things that threaten to break us are the same forces that create what will outlive us. Because legends don't truly die. They live on in every note, every memory, every heart they once touched. If Hendrix could rise, maybe you can too.